get feeding that many. Anyway, I was in charge of the refrigeration end of it. I had 3 other guys that helped me, and we had, they'd order the food, and we had an elevator right down below where the food was stored, and we'd stink and stuff up every day, all day long. And we had all the ice down there. We froze all the ice down there. We had an engineer that dumped oil overboard and pulled it back into the separators, so we didn't have any water to drink. The only thing I had was I had lots of ice, and the troops, they had come down and see me to get ice. We had a commissary on there. They could get all kinds of drinks and what have you. They could get candy. They could get cigarettes. In them days, everybody smoked. It seemed like, and they could get cigarettes for $3 a carton. And anyway, we were in San Francisco, picked up the troops, and picked up equipment and food. And then we headed for Guam. We had an escort due to they could be underground bombs in the water, because they did. A lot of the ships hit those bombs that they put in the water.
Mr. McGrew, those were mines, right? Floating mines the Japanese had?
Yeah, they put the mines in there. We had an escort that was checking all that stuff when we were going over there. We were there about, I guess it took us a week or so to get to Guam. And of course, Guam was the main airfield between United States and the overseas. All the air pilots and troops went over from. They shipped them from there. And anyway, we pulled into Guam, and we knew where it pulled in and landed, and a big storm hit. And they told us to pull back out of the harbor out into the sea. And we out there, and the ship was full bore into that storm and didn't move an inch. But
Wow.
Boy, it was terrible.
That must have been a powerful current if you're hitting that at full steam and you're not moving.
Yeah, we've did that. Then we pulled back in, and we pulled into and unloaded troops, and we unloaded Air Force, and then we picked up some more that was coming home, because we would come back home after we left for our final stop. Then we went to Saipan. You know where Saipan is? That's where the
Is it like an island off Japan?
yeah.
Is it like close to Japan?
Saipan was the Japanese hospital. That's where they had the Japanese had their big hospital on there, and I mean it was a big place. We pulled into Saipan, and anyway we got to go on. They told us we had taken over Saipan at that time, and they told us we could go up to the hospital, but they said don't bother anybody in.
I'm your teacher, Leo.
Oh.
Sure, Mr. McGrew would like that
What's
too.
that for?
My bad.
What's that for?
My bad.
Anyway, we went up to the hospital, and they told us don't touch anything because they're liable to be booby trapped. But anyway, the Japanese, only thing they had to eat was snails. And on Saipan, the snails were like this. Great big snails. They'd come down the road, you could hear them plop, 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 plop. In the morning you'd hear them come down there, but they were just piles and piles of
shells.
shells.
They had eaten all of the snails.
Yeah, that's the only thing they had to eat. And there was, when, after we took over, there was some, over on the west side, there was some Japanese over there that didn't know the war was over with. And they were still fighting us. But they stayed over there, and then I guess they finally knew that the war was over with. But anyway, Saipan was an interesting place to see. The water was so clear, you could see clear to the bottom, and you'd see all these beautiful fish swimming around in there. But the thing is, when we left Saipan, we pulled out of the harbor and lost both screws.
You mean your propellers, right?
Yeah,
So
lost
you
both
guys
of them. I guess they'd loosened up when it was in the storm. So anyway, we had to be pulled back in, and then, but I don't know where they got those or got new screws, but we was in there about 2 weeks before we was able to go anywhere else. And then we got that, and then we headed back to, we picked up troops there that was going home, and the people that we picked up, most of them are being released in the war, World War II. They were, anyway, we went back to Hawaii. We went to some other islands, picked up troops, and we brought all these people back that was being released from the war during World War II, because it was at the time I was in there. It was just about the end of the war when we were hauling troops. But Merchant Marines, you didn't realize that they were the ones that hauled all the equipment, all the people that was there. They were not the Merchant Marines were not in the fighting. My uncle, who was in a Merchant Marine for 60 years, he had the ship blown out from under him 3 times. They carried fuel, gasoline, all kinds of food, what have you, to the troops that was there, that was overseas. But anyway, we went back to Hawaii, and then from there, we went on back to San Francisco. And the ship that I was on was decommissioned at that time, so I couldn't go on anywhere else. It was Admiral E.W. Everly. If you look on the internet, you can pick it up in there. You can pick it up in there, and it'll tell you all about the ship. So anyway, I enjoyed it. I would have liked to went further, but they decommissioned the ship and they released all of us. So I came home. So anyway, if you want to get into a service, Merchant Marines is a good place to go. They pay well. Your pay is a lot better than it is in any of the other services, where it's a Navy or Army or what have you. But we enjoyed it very much.
Now, Pops, how old were you when you went into the Merchant Marines?
I was 20 years old.
Okay.
What year was that, sir?
Pardon?
What year did you enlist?
In the Merchant Marines, I enlisted, I think it was 1944. I'm 90 years old now.
You just turned 90 the other day. That was
Nice,
his
that's
birthday.
awesome.
I'm 90 years old now. I take no medication. I enjoy life. I travel. I live with my daughter in Tennessee. We have a little chicken ranch back there. And then I come out here and I see my son. I live with my son out here for 2 months. I go back and forth every 2 months. But, if you want to go into the Merchant Marines, that's a good place to go. I'd recommend it.
Pops.
Yeah.
Oh,
Have you ever gone back to Guam since you were there during the war?
Pardon?
Have you ever gone back to Guam since you were there?
No, I haven't been back to Guam since then, but it is now, it's very well, lots of families have built houses there. Why, do you know about that?
No, I didn't.
Have you been to Guam?
No, I haven't. It's just pretty interesting because how you described
Yeah,
it.
Guam is an interesting
Seems like a
place.
really good, tourist.
They had, it was the largest airfield between here and overseas.
Well, it was a good halfway point, but the Japanese captured Guam
Yeah.
during the war, and we had to take that back.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
that was one of the battles in the, they learned about the island hopping campaign
Yeah,
in here. And that was one that we chose to attack. Also the one that you described, Saipan, with the big hospital.
yeah.
When you guys docked in Saipan, were there a lot of wreckage and remnants of the battle there? Were there a
Yeah,
lot of
there's
signs?
there's a lot of, it was pretty well stored up. You know, you could see where all the bombing and what have you was done. The hospital up there was in pretty good shape. You know, where the Japanese, we didn't bomb the hospital. We were good about doing that. I guess that's what, United States didn't want to kill any more people than they had to kill. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Tyler. Question.
Yeah, you
Here?
Yeah.
Where were you when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
But
Where were you when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
we were there in right there, and we could see the ships that was sunk and what have you. We could get to those. It was a terrible mess.
Did you hear about Pearl Harbor on December 7th? I think that's what his question was. Or did you hear about maybe the next day? Was it all over the news or all over the
Well, I remember when Roosevelt came on, I guess, we didn't have TV then, it was radio. Came on the radio stating that we had been bombed by Japan, and he was declaring war against Japan. And it was, I saw an article the other day that stated that the Merchant Marines lost 400,000 people, and that was more than the soldiers did. We only lost 200,000. The Merchant Marines, with what they had to do, they were in jeopardy a lot of times.
especially with the U-boat presence, right? There are U-boats.
Yeah,
These kids know about U-boats.
yeah,
And you mentioned that your uncle had 3 ships sunk.
yeah.
Were any of those the product of U-boat attacks in the Atlantic?
I don't know. I never talked to him about that, except, anyway, he didn't have to get hurt or anything, luckily. And he retired out of the Merchant Marines several years ago now. It's been several years ago.
Did you, because of Japanese submarines, did you guys use a zigzag pattern when you were sailing, or was there no threat from Japanese subs at that point?
I don't know, but we had escorts all the time. And, to check and make sure there was any submarines or bomb, underwater explosives. They checked on that for us.
Did you guys ever transport wounded soldiers back?
Yes, we did. We had some wounded soldiers on there, but my father-in-law, my wife's dad, him and I both went in the Merchant Marines at the same time, and he was on a hospital ship that that brought all these soldiers back that was wounded.
That must have been a tough job to deal with,
Yeah,
seeing
it
all of
was.
those wounded
He
guys.
was an electrician on there, so he said it was a lot of people on there. It's terrible, all these people that had to, we had to take care of, and we're not taking care of them like we should.
Were you only sailing in the Pacific, or were you also like going in between?
I'm a little hard of hearing.
Were you only in the Pacific, or did you go in
On
between?
the Pacific only. We
Only
went on the Pacific, only on the Pacific.
What was it like being on a ship in the middle of the ocean? I mean, did you get used to it after a while, or were you always being thrown around?
I never got seasick in my life. When I was on there, even in that big storm, we had lots of soldiers on there sick. But luckily, I never got sick. And I never got sick till several years after I got back home. I went on a fishing trip to St. Catalina, and the water was rougher than a cob. And they were pulling back diesel back in there. Oh, I never got so sick in my life, and you know, I still have trouble going out. And seasickness is not fun. It's
What was
not.
the post-war world like, and when you came back with all of, everybody coming back from the war and everything? What can you tell us about, like, your post-war experience, those years after the war?
Well, a lot of them that came back went into, of course, they wanted to work, and there wasn't a lot of work to be done. I mean, it just was not here. And the soldiers had a big problem when they come home. Not being out there. A lot of them, believe it or not, a lot of them couldn't find their families.
Really?
Yeah, and a lot of them who had been married before they went on, they come back and they couldn't find their wives. A lot of them got remarried. I guess I'm about to say.
Yeah, that's where
They
it
got
does a song.
remarried
That's how it
instead of waiting for them to come back. So some of them was in there 6 or 8 years. Oops, there he is. Come on in.
No, it's fine.
Come on in,
It's
come
all
on in,
good.
sir.
So Pops, how many people or how many troops were on your boat that you were on?
I said 16 to
16 to
18,000.
18,000? That's a
That's
lot.
a lot of people.
Yeah.
And to feed that many every day.
What were some of the meals like, being on a ship like that with all of these soldiers? I mean, was it like cafeteria style, like?
Well, they fed well. We had a lot of meat. We had lots of vegetables. We had lots of frozen milk on board. We had lots of eggs, and they ate well. We had a lot of. I remember sending up lots of steaks. I could go up and eat with I didn't have to eat with the soldiers. But I cooked my own downstairs. I had a little hot plate down there, and the 3 of us, we'd eat downstairs.
Oh no.
And we'd cook our own meals down there, and my forecastle where I stayed was right up in the front of in the bow of the ship, right above where it was being steered. We could see from my forecastle, we could see whatever was going on.
Were your only two islands that you went to in the Pacific Guam and Saipan, or did you guys go to any other islands?
Our main was San Francisco, Guam, Hawaii, and Saipan. We made that kind of a round trip. We were taking over there and picking up and bringing back.
So did you only do one voyage there and one voyage back?
I only made one voyage back. I made trips over there.
Okay.
And so anyway, when I got back, they decommissioned the ship, and I understood that it went to somebody bought it over in Europe somewhere.
Well, a lot of those ships probably were used to transport Marshall Plan supplies back to Europe.
Yeah,
You know, a lot of the ships that were decommissioned in our merchant marines were shipping all of the building supplies and everything to Europe.
yeah, that's correct. So anyway, it was a good life. I enjoyed it. I would have liked to have done some more, but they let us loose.
So we entered the Cold War right after World War II, but did we decommissioned and then we discharged the majority of our military personnel,
Yeah,
correct?
that's correct.
Do you know why we did that?
No, I don't. Really no.
What job did you get into after the war?
I got into the structural pest control. Believe it or not, right here in this town.
Really? So from Tennessee to here?
Well, I'm just living in Tennessee now.
Okay.
My wife and I moved back to Tennessee when my daughter and her husband moved back there. And then
Where did you grow up, sir?
in Englewood.
Really? Okay. So you're a Californian. Oh, all right, all right.
My wife was from Baltimore, Maryland. I was from a little town called Atlanta, Missouri. You probably never heard of it. It's a hole in the road. Then I went to Iowa City and I had my education in Iowa City before I came to California. Then I met my wife out here, and eventually we got married. We had 3 children. They all went through the Englewood school system, and I finished up my schooling out here. And but anyway, they all went through the Englewood school system. When I got out of the Merchant Marines, my stepfather had a structural pest control in Englewood, so he wanted me to go to work for him. So I went to him, and then I took over his business. Then my son took over his business. Now my great
My father is working for
great grand, and he's doing mole work here in here, and
Pest and
my
Weed.
my son has a Sam's Pest Termite Control here.
Okay.
So we've been in it for many years.
I'd say so. Do you have any advice to us to live to 90? What do we got to do?
Pardon?
Do you have any advice for us to get to 90? What do we got to do?
That's a good question. I was born on a farm. I ate everything that you shouldn't eat. I ate all the fat stuff, bacon, biscuits, and gravy, and fried chicken and all that stuff when I was growing up. And here, a few years ago, I went in to get a physical, and the doctor asked me about what I was doing. And I said, well, what I was in. He said, well, don't change it now.
It's been working. It's great.
So I eat whatever I want, but I'm not sure that's what you should do. Unless you grew up on it. Maybe if you grew up on it, you'd want to do it. So, but no, you guys, you're going to another level now in education. And, next year, you'll be something else. And I enjoy talking to people.
We've got, with where we're at now in technology and access to technology in regards to the World War II era, there are so many resources that we can rely upon, a lot of them being movies, Hollywood recreations. A lot of these kids saw Saving Private Ryan, we saw Holocaust videos and such. Is there anything that you would recommend if someone really wanted to learn the World War II era that you would say, hey, I would look at this? Is there anything you would recommend?
Well, first thing, I'd get all the education I can get. That's the thing, get all the education you can get, because the technical part of the world is all going technical, and you need all the education you can get, because otherwise you're going to be on the street. I have my retirement is pretty slim, and I didn't know I could get some other money till recently, and I applied for it, and they're working on it now, because I have my card of Merchant Marines, and you can get stuff, but I should have applied for it a long time ago.
Mr. Magruder, our time's going to run out here, so I don't want you to be interrupted by the bell, but I wanted to, first of all, thank you for coming in and speaking with us.
I enjoyed it. I enjoy talking to kids. I love babies. My wife always loved babies. I love babies. She's passed on now, and I think the good Lord is she's up there taking care of those babies that the mothers and fathers didn't want them. That's what I feel like.
Well, again, thank you very much for speaking
Oh,
with us.
I'm glad to come and talk to anybody.
Well, I'm going to give you a minute or two to take a breather. I'll get you some water, because we got
I have
another
a
class
water.
of kids coming in. Perfect. Got another group of kids coming in for you.
Oh, okay.